Thanks for attending the webinar today. Today we are going through the forgotten mental training for elite performance. It's a very exciting topic that I'm really looking forward to hearing all about. Before I turn it over, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have a question that you'd like us to ask at the end of the webinar, go ahead and enter it in the question area. Please do not wait until the very end. It's nice that we can collect all the questions as the presentations are going through. And also, we are going to be recording this, and you should receive an email after this webinar with more information on how to access the archive recording of the webinar. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. Yeah, today, the title of today's presentation is Forgotten Mental Training for Elite Performance. And I want to say thanks to TrainingPeaks for hosting this. And thought we'd start off with first a brief introduction of the main presenters today, and that'll be ourselves, Mark Williams, that's me, and Bill Philpott from Dynamic Human Solutions, and then Ben Day, professional cyclist from here out of Boulder. With that being said, let's start with a brief introduction here about Ben and the work he does. Ben?
Well, I'll say good morning, everybody. I'm actually dialing in from Australia today, so I'm sorry if I sound upside down a little bit down here, but it's, if you don't realize, we're the right side up. So anyway, so this is the first time I've been on this side of a webinar before, so it's I've got a few extra little gadgets and widgets on the screen, so I can't just be sitting there twiddling my thumbs and following along. So I'm going to do my best to kind of keep up with everything here, and hopefully we can convey this information to you guys. I think it's really interesting information that it's a realm that just, you know, hasn't really been utilized to the maximum capacity yet, and so it's going to be a really exciting thing to share with you. So I've been a professional cyclist for 13 or 14 years now. I've been racing all throughout the world. You know, originally from Australia, I spent 6 or 7 years racing. Now I'm based in Boulder, Colorado, and I race with the UnitedHealthcare Pro Cycling team. So still kicking around, still currently racing professional today. Just finished a race here in Australia last week. And my coaching company, DaybyDay Coaching, I started in 2008. And I started this coaching company in order to help share some of the experiences that we learn on the road. And the thing is that there's a lot going on in the labs and with the scientists, and there's a lot of information out there, but actually putting that into a practical application that's very beneficial to performance. It's not always, there's so much information out there that you know, I see it as my role to kind of help glean through some of this information and present to you guys, like, just stuff that really helps your performance. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I'm really here just to help impart this information to you.
Great. And so just a little bit about us here at Dynamic Human Solutions. As you can see on the slide, trying to get the slide to go to the next place. Here we go. It wouldn't be right if there wasn't some technical issues. But the place that we're coming from is, my background is as a former F-15 fighter pilot in the Air Force. I flew the F-15 for 3 years and had a chance to go and fly in combat during our first iteration of the Gulf War. And so, you know, from that, there was some very interesting learnings that I took away in terms of what was working for me in combat, what happens to the mind under that kind of extreme duress, and what happens, frankly, to your performance when that kind of intensity is all around you. After I got out of the Air Force through a variety of different ways, mostly through the martial arts, though, I wound up in the world of meditation and studying with some folks who were basically meditation masters. As I started doing that, I started realizing there was a real strong connection between some of the things that I'd seen in terms of my own mind flying in combat and how to prepare for that, and some of the rigorous training that I could see in terms of learning about mindfulness and meditation and how that changed things in terms of being able to predict how my mind was going to perform and being able to actually start taking the reins of my mind so that it would be my ally rather than a distraction. And through that, then, over the course of some years, we came together, Bill Filter and I, who's here, and we put together a program that we thought would really work for taking the world of meditation into the world of high performance. And, whether you're an elite performer in the world of athletics, or whether you're an elite performer somewhere else, or actually, frankly, whether you're just an ordinary performer but just want to improve your understanding of your own mind and your ability to make friends with that and take charge of it instead of having it pull you around by the nose. That's what this program is designed to do. You know, in the past couple of years, we've trained a lot of folks from, you know, law enforcement folks, SWAT type people, regular cops, firefighters, special operators, fighter pilots in Norway. We've also trained a bunch of folks in the really high level of athletics, you know, folks like Ben, who's joining us here. But we've also trained world champion rock climbers, world champion slopestyle skiers, and, you know, MMA folks, jiu-jitsu folks, a whole variety of different levels and types of athletes, so that they can learn how to understand how stress manifests in their body and how they can start taking control of their mind when it's all about performance. And we've also taken this out into the corporate and executive world. So we've got a varied background. You know, training your mind doesn't matter where you're coming from or what you want to apply it to. The bottom line is you start becoming more familiar with how it works, so that it's not this kind of black art thing. You can actually turn it into a science, something to help you kind of move through your day and perform when you want to. Ben, you want to tell us a little bit about how we kick this off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, Mark. That's you know, I'm teaching. Well, I'm not teaching here at all. What I'm trying to do here is just share some of my personal experiences and in you know, in my own career, and why I actually reached out to these guys in the first place, looking for some assistance. So I'm going to share with you just a little bit of a personal story. You know, like a couple of years ago, I was just in a bad space, and at the time, my mum had had cancer for 3 years, and it had been progressively getting worse, and it was just one of those unknown timeline things that was obviously weighing heavily on my mind. You know, at the same time, I was, you know, having, you know, dealing with stuff during my racing career, also running a coaching company, and, you know, I was just going through a period where I was just go, go, go all the time, and I wasn't kind of stopping to digest what was going on, and wasn't looking after myself. You know, I was kind of just head down and not really being aware of, or, you know, giving myself a break or anything like that. And I remember being in Europe at the time, and I was racing this race in Italy. I went down there and I put some expectation on myself. I wanted to do well in this race, and, you know, I get into the race, and I still vividly remember this. I was in the stage. We're going up this climb. I'm in the group. I'm well positioned, and you know, I started to drop back. You know, I wasn't feeling good, and at that point, I had this negative thought that came into my mind. And I know as endurance athletes and a lot of athletes, they reassurance, like, you know, I can do it, I can get there, and I'm going to win, and, you know, it's a constant battle back and forth, and I know that we all go through that. That particular day was, you know, I see it as one of the only days where I was completely defeated. You know, I was in the front of the group, then I was at the back of the group, and I was getting dropped off the back of the group, and then the negative turmoil, that negative energy in my mind, it got so bad that I completely took myself out of it, and 20 kilometers later, I was on the side of the road and asking for a lift home, so I was out of the race. After that, you know, I went in and had a good chat to my team directors, who were supportive. They knew everything that was going on at the time. We had a chat, and all of a sudden, you know, everything just broke down. You know, all this stuff that I've been bottling up for a period of time, and it was a combination of real world stuff and performance, you know, athletic. And so I talked to these guys, and I realized that at that point, if I didn't do something about it, then I was going to actually lose my career. You know, my mind was in such a weak spot at that point that if I didn't do something to clear the mind and be able to put myself in a position where I had room to move again, room to kind of just concentrate on performance, then I wasn't going to be able to get back there. So got on a plane, came back to the US, and it was empowering just to kind of make a decision that I'm not going to just ignore it and drink my way through it, or just push it down and give it time or whatever. I thought, I'm actually going to go out and try to find somebody to do something about this. And so I tried to come up with a couple of different options. Like I kind of said before, there's a lot of information in this world, and sometimes I didn't have a good connection with this person. I didn't feel, I kind of thought I was sitting in the couch, the age-old couch, and felt that everything he was telling me was just common sense, and I was smarter than him, and I don't know, it just really, I didn't connect to it. And that's where I was introduced to Mark and Bill of Dynamic Human Solutions here, and I was referred to them by a guy called Dr. Inigo San Milan, who's a renowned physiologist, and he's all about performance, and these guys have been talking to Inigo about how they could utilize some of their stuff for performance in different realms. And so I went in and met with Mark, and we had a chat through my situation, and he explained to me what basically some of the science behind what it is we're actually doing. And I'm the kind of person that I can't just jump into something without knowing what's behind it, what's actually happening in the background to actually make it beneficial. So we had a good chat, and I decided that I'd give it a go, and we experience for me, and it really brought the importance of the mental training issue to home. And this is why I'm here today. I want to share some of this stuff with you guys. So I'll hand back over to these guys so they can explain to you a little bit about what this science is, what it is that is happening in the background, and what we can actually do to turn the mind into a performance tool, and something that we can use as a strength as opposed to a weakness. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So let's just talk real briefly about it. And Ben alluded to this, and I spoke about it briefly before. And what I really want folks to take away from this presentation is the understanding that the mind biceps. In the world of mind training, the world of mental training, what you get is growth in the brain. Now, the disadvantage is you don't see that happening, but the advantage is that you really quickly see a change in your performance and a change in your ability to start managing your internal state. And so, they've done the research, they've looked at fMRIs, and they put the brain under these types of scanners, and they see what happens when you do these types of exercises. And what, in effect, starts happening is the good parts of your brain grow. And the parts of your brain that are holding you back because, for example, you're under a lot of stress, those parts of the brain start shrinking. And so, all the evidence indicates that there's huge advantages to doing this type of training and to the outcomes that end up happening. And you have to understand it's just like physical training. There is no difference whatsoever. And so if you put in your 20 to 30 minutes per day, just like you do in other types of training, you're going to see the kind of results that end up speaking for themselves in terms of your ability to do things differently. So let me tell you a little bit about how the program is structured. And our program is designed so that the first thing that we end up focusing on is what we call the body dynamics. And the understanding from our perspective is pretty straightforward. Frankly, as everybody knows, you can't do well in anything you're doing if your body is in a stressed out state. And so the first thing we start what's happening around you, really tuning into what your stress state is and learning techniques to start managing that. We all know that when we have terrible days, our ability to do other things really goes down, okay? And so the idea here is, rather than to be kind of battered by the winds of what's happening around you and feeling like you don't have any tools, what we want to do is learn to start seeing our state. What's our stress state? Are we really being beat up by what's happening around us? And then, rather than just going, gee whiz, I don't know what to do about this, now we actually have some tools that we can apply and go, okay, I want to start changing where my body is and where my mind are, and now I have the capacity to do that in a way that maybe I didn't have before. So that's the body dynamics portion. Once folks learn that, once you can regulate your nervous system, then we go into the mind dynamics. And the mind dynamics is really tuning into now how it is that your mind works and starting to really exercise that muscle directly. And so in the mind training portion, the mind dynamics, what we start really training are the abilities of the mind to focus on something, to change its attention at will, to keep its attention on something, and then to have awareness of what's going on around you. In other words, the ability to tune in to what all your senses are, all the information that your senses are providing. And there's specific tools that we teach to do that. And just like what does it feel like when I'm at 80% capacity in terms of my effort? Well, the question now becomes, well, what does it feel like when I'm at 80% capacity in terms of my focus and attention? What does it feel like when I'm giving something 20% capacity? Most folks, you ask them that question, you get kind of a puzzled look. Well, the idea of this type training is to be able to know precisely where your mind is and to be able to apply it just like you would any other muscle, okay? Finally, as we wrap up the program, then we start focusing on developing what's in the fighter pilot world called situational awareness. You hear this word situational awareness bantered about nowadays in the NFL. Cops are talking about it. All kinds of sports folks are talking about it. And situational awareness originally came out of the world of fighter jet flying. And that's really the capacity to be able to take in a lot of information in a dynamic environment. And whether you're in the peloton or whether you're in a swim, in a triathlete, or whether you're in any kind of sports activity or actually anything that involves performance and the situation's dynamic, developing the capacity to enhance your situational awareness really changes things in terms of your ability to be in that situation and be at your best. And so all together, those three things provide the foundation for developing the mental tools for high performance. Let me just touch briefly a little bit on the research. And you can go out and find a lot about mindfulness now in terms of the research. But for our purposes here, here's some of the key things that it does. First, it's about self-awareness. And that's, if you're in a team sport, for example, how can you stay in tune with how your teammates are doing and then, frankly, how you're doing with your teammates? The other thing is reducing bias and negative thought. That's what Ben was talking about before. What are the tools that you can apply on a daily basis so that you can start taking the reins of your mind and it's not just running away and taking you to a negative place? And whether that's, right before the race or the day before the race or just on an ordinary day where you're not feeling so well and all of a sudden there's a lot of negativity pouring in, how do you manage that? And how do you manage that in a way that, comes from an understanding of the mind and not just something like, well, I got to say my mantra more. I mean, saying those mantras, those statements to kind of keep on your game are great, but getting underneath that, understand the working of the mind so that you can really do something with those negative thoughts and not feel like you're being pulled around by the nose by them. And then the last thing that I've got here is, the ability to improve your post-workout recovery. And really, they've done studies on this, and folks who are doing these kinds of techniques, they have the positive hormones that you want after a workout, testosterone, melatonin. All these things are going to help your body recover from the stress that you induce during a workout. And what it's going to reduce is the ongoing presence of adrenaline and cortisol, which, it's nice to have them when you need them, but you don't want them there all the time. And so these techniques give us the ability to basically start turning the spigot on and off those things and start managing how those hormones and when those hormones are showing up in our body so that, just like we manage our nutrition, just like we manage the intensity of our workout, now we start managing how we want our mind and body to be expressing themselves together. And so when it's all said and done, now you have the same kind of ability to train that like you would when you train physical exercise. Then you want to tell us a little bit about, how it worked for you in terms of the stress management piece?
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that scary photo that you just put there. A little bit too much for time of the morning. So, I get it. I get it. Mental training, it's a little bit of a fuzzy realm, and it's one of those things that we're all driven and successful people, and we like to be able to have some tangibility with the thing that we're doing. Like, it's the bicep curl. You do a bicep curl, your bicep gets bigger. It's easy to see, it's that material object, that's a tangibility there that you're like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm getting stronger, that's great, I'm going to keep doing it, I'm motivated for it now. This stuff is a little bit different, and there's subtle changes that occur. But it's arguably bigger than doing a bicep curl. It's such a powerful tool. And so when I was starting to experience doing these exercises, I was definitely looking for some sort of tangibility there, some kind of measure to see that what I'm doing isn't just airy-fairy and it's not a waste of time. It's actually giving me some sort of improvement. So you see up here in the slide at the moment, there's a chiropractor in North Boulder that a good friend of mine. I've been seeing him for 7 or 8 years, for the bulk of my professional career. And he knows me really well, and he's done this a lot on me over the years. I don't know if you can see these slides really clearly, but so this is a stress test, and it's based upon heart rate variability, skin temperature, and skin conductance. And so what it is basically trying to get a measure on your autonomic nervous system. And I'm notoriously bad at this thing. I admittedly don't do enough to kind of sit down and do nothing and let kind of things rest, let the mind rest and stuff. And these two slides here were around the time that I was dealing with everything. Try to pass this information on to you guys. And you see on the first slide on the left, I'm very far into the sympathetic nervous system. There's a little white dot on the left-hand side there, about halfway down the red portion. And what that says is that I'm very much in the fight or flight realm. Basically, my hormonal system and my nervous system has me in a state of panic and anxiety, and it's just not a good place to be. So that's where I was before I started doing the first of the exercises, and it's one of the most basic of the exercises. And all it was breathing. It's a way of breathing called belly breathing, and it's doing that 20 minutes a day for the first week. All of a sudden, I went back to see Dr. Day there at North Boulder Chiro, and you can see I nearly scored a bullseye just outside of the green spot there. So it reset my nervous system to a good balance, between the sympathetic, between the parasympathetic, but it gave me I was now in a situation so I could deal. I could deal with what was being thrown at me. I could respond, and I was now in a good situation where I could kind of build upon the work that I needed to do to kind of get back to where I needed to be. So I'll pass it back over to you guys so you can explain what some of these exercises are.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, Ben. So just briefly to take a look at, the body dynamics piece. And, the body dynamics, as you mentioned, looks at the piece of personal wellness and resilience, via stress management, and that really is the foundation of performance. And so in that part of the program, what we first focus on is activation awareness, and that really is developing the ability to see and understand what your stress state is. And so, for example, these pictures that Ben had from, the heart rate variability measures are great, but just like any other biofeedback, you can start developing the sense of where your body is, what your state is. You can develop that as you start paying attention to it. And so, in the first part of the training program, what we do with Ben and what we do all the time with everybody is first start developing a sense of, okay, what's my stress state and what's my level of activation? So that's the activation awareness piece. Once folks understand that, in the same way that you can go, ow, I've got, a pull in my hamstring or a pull in my quad, oh, gee whiz, guess what? I'm not in my best state right now. I'm really stressed out because of X, Y, Z. And to be able to realize that and realize that quickly, and then to start applying tools. And so there's tools that we have to rest and relax, and Ben mentioned one, the belly breathing, which we'll do a brief demo of here shortly. That's key and important because then you can start changing that state right then and there. And then on the heels of that, we teach how to recalibrate your system. So sleep is always the most important thing for managing stress. I mean, how many of us have sleep problems nowadays, right? And the ability to be able to start managing sleep, put yourself in a place where you prepare yourself for sleep is an important skill to have, and that's a skill that can be learned like anything else. If you look at the slide in front of you, we have what's called just a kind of a conceptual display of what these exercises do. So, Ben talked about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And quite briefly, the sympathetic nervous system is like fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system is like rest and relax. And over the course of your day, you wake up in the morning, your sympathetic gets more engaged, so you start going up the curve this way. And then as the day passes on, maybe it's lunchtime, and then it starts coming down. And then you have a conversation, an animated conversation with your friend, and again, you go up and you engage your sympathetic more. And so that's kind of how we go through our day. We go up and down, and depending on the circumstances around us and what's happening on that particular part of the day, the body naturally regulates itself in terms of how it wants to move up and down. Okay? Being in that place where you can engage yourself, you can put yourself in a place where, oh, okay, now I'm going to do something athletic. You can feel the adrenaline start pouring in. That's exactly what you want to have familiarity with. To go, am I where I need to be? And then you start developing a sensitivity to, all right, am I in the right place in my optimal zone? Am I up here in my sympathetic, or did I go too far? And now, am I in fight or flight? And what happens in fight or flight is now you're not at your best performance. You've got too much sympathetic. You're like the human being running away from the lion. You're just absolutely terrified. And you start losing your ability to think clearly and to do the things you train to do because all you're doing is basically going into survival mode. So that's not the place we want to be. We want to be able to recognize when we start going past where the optimal zone is and into a fight or flight state. Similarly, you want to be able to rest and relax. We want to be able to choose to come down closer to the parasympathetic. But we also want to know that, gee, guess what? If I go too far into my rest and relax, my sympathetic, it's a bad thing. So in a performance situation, I want to be able to shoot for this peak right here, right at the top of sympathetic, where I'm not in fight or flight, but I've got my sympathetic fully engaged so I can be in the optimal zone. And then on the flip side of that, when I want to really rest and recalibrate, when I want to really recover from a large, an intense workout, I want to be able to know that I can bring myself down. I can bring myself out of that stress state. I can put away the worry of my everyday living so that I can sleep, I can relax, and I can recalibrate my nervous system. So that's what it's all about. On the heels of that, the other thing that happens is when you start becoming sensitive to where your body is from a stress state perspective, you can move higher or lower from a sympathetic or parasympathetic perspective. So you can consciously and willfully engage your sympathetic nervous system and bring it online more quickly, okay? And then you can also take it offline more quickly so that when you need to perform, you're right there at the peak, and you're at a higher peak because you're choosing to get there, and the body has the capacity to learn that. And then alternatively, when you're done and you don't need that anymore, you can bring yourself out of that stress state and bring yourself to a place of deep relaxation. And that, frankly, is, what it's all about in terms of understanding your activation rate and then being able to manage. And so with that being said, we want to just do a brief demo of what these exercises look like. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bill Filter here. He's going to do a quick demonstration of the belly breathing exercise. Bill?
So what we're doing with this is a foundational practice. And what we're doing with this fight or flight, that we're in this adrenaline state. And we want to have the ability to pull that out, to pull out that adrenaline and to get ourselves in a parasympathetic rest and recalibrate type state. So this exercise works with the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, directly. And I'll slide back a little so you can see me. And feel free to do this exercise along with me so you can get a sense of what it does to your system. Okay. So what we're doing is we're going to try to use the body, give body cues to the brain so that we can trick the brain to rest and relax. If we continue with our thinking patterns, telling our brain to make those changes, not so beneficial. But to trick using body cues to the brain, we can get the effect we want. Pulling out that adrenaline, cortisol, and getting that rest and recalibrate state. So here's how you do it. We sit in a chair comfortably. We want to feel the back of our chair up against our back. That gives a cue that we're being held, almost like we were in the womb, where our back was held. So we want to create that. So we're leaned back in our chair. Our feet are on the ground with a feel of sense of earth and solidity. The other thing we want to do is we want to turn our hands over, palms up. Why do we do that? Well, if we were in a fight or flight situation and we're really fighting for our lives, we either have fists to protect ourselves or to strike, or maybe claws, right? But in this sense, we have our hands wide open. We'd never do that in a fight or flight situation. So again, we're giving that cue to the brain. The next thing we want to do is we want to breathe from our bellies, right under our belly button. And we want to exhale out all of our air, drawing the into the spine. And then we want to fill up through the nose, fill up the belly. Big, like Santa Claus, or like we're pregnant. And then we want to take one last sip for the chest, so that we have 100% capacity. Now, we would never take breaths that large if we were trying to flight situation. We breathe high in our chest and we pump blood into our large muscle groups. So, what we want to do now, we take this posture, and we want to take 3 of these belly breaths. We'll just do that together. So, 3 repetitions, which will make up 1 set of belly breaths. So let's exhale out all our air. Breathe in belly. Breathe in chest. And exhale from the belly. Relax. Breathe in belly. Breathe in chest. And exhale from the belly. Pull the navel to the spine. Breathe in belly. Breathe in chest. And exhale. Really relax. Now just breathe naturally and recognize, what's changed. How has it changed? I'm going to do 3 more. But what we're going to do is we're going to add some tension, some tightening in these next 3 reps. So we're going to tighten our fists. We're going to bring our shoulders up to our ears as we fill our belly and fill our chest. Then on the exhale, we're going to totally relax our shoulders, flip our hands back over, and exhale out the dregs of our air so we can get some nice breath off, fresh oxygen with the next breath. So let's do 3 of these together. Exhale out all your air. Breathe in belly. Breathe in chest. Tighten. And release. Relax the shoulders. Breathe in belly. Breathe in chest. Tighten. And release. All of your air. Breathe in belly. Breathe in chest. Tighten. And release. Breathe naturally. Again, take an internal inventory. What's changed? More relaxed. Has some of that tension dissipated? pretty naturally. We're going to do a third set, which would be somewhat a super set, 3 sets each with 3 reps. We're just going to do the standard belly breaths with no tightening, just filling up our belly, filling up our chest with 100% capacity, and then exhaling through the mouth, getting all the air out of the system. So begin exhale out your air. Fill up belly, chest, exhale from the belly. Big belly, big chest, and exhale. Breathe naturally. So that gives us an example of what that rest and that recalibration of the nervous system feels like. And that's just one of several body dynamic techniques that start to get us to have control of that autonomic nervous system. When do I want to be activated? When do I want to be deactivated? And doing that with these tools that we develop at the appropriate times for the situation that arises. Turn it back over to Mark.
Thanks, Bill. And just by way of brief introduction, we'll talk specifically.
We've just walked through then is it's not, so it's more of a stress management situation, but without doing that, you can't move on to more performance-based techniques, which which maybe that's what you're here to grab today. But if you're not in a good state to start with, you really can't dial in and get really sharp focus and get the most out of the other techniques. So that's the belly breathing, and so my experience with that was, I started training at home. I was in a nice setting, trying to keep the noise quiet, and I was sitting there and practicing these things, and that's where I saw such big benefits just in my state of being, one with those stress tests, but also I felt I was able to kind of deal and able to deal with situations that were coming up. And we also did another technique which was called riding the breath, and it's really about clearing the mind. So that was a big issue for me at that point, because in that race in Italy, I was going up that climb, and there's this chatter. I had all this noise coming through in my head, and it was just such a negative conversation, and it was noisy, and I couldn't shut the damn thing up. So I actually had to practice using this second technique, riding the breath. I actually had to practice how to quiet those noises down. And you can't control that from coming into your mind. Like, you're still going to have those thoughts. It's not like you can just toughen up all of a sudden and stop that from happening. It doesn't work like that. It's not that easy. But you can choose what you do with it. And by practicing every time you have that thought and coming back onto focus and onto task, you're keeping your mind clear and keeping yourself in a state of mind where you can then just concentrate on the race, and then flipping that over, you can start using positive thoughts and visualization to move forward. And at that point, you're looking more for success and performance and athletic endeavors. But it all starts with that belly breathing. For me, if you don't relieve that stress in the first place, if you don't get to that state, you have no capacity to move and no capacity to grow with this other stuff. And so the biggest test for me with all of that stuff, and it was only three or 4 weeks into learning it, was going home, and my mum had passed away, and I remember being there at the funeral, and I was asked to do a eulogy, and 100% of the time I was going to do it because just to remember my mum and to honour her, and it was a very hard situation and one of the most emotionally challenging moments of my life, and I had to employ these tools just to keep some sort of composure as as it may have seemed, but otherwise there was no way at all that I could have gotten through the speech and been able to deliver what I wanted to deliver on that day. So that was the biggest test for me, with that. It was a real world situation. It wasn't so much sports or athletic pursuits. But I think that's the pinnacle. That's as bad as it can get. So fast forward a little bit later on, and I'm using this in racing situations. And one particular moment that stood out well for me was a race that I did at the end of the year. And for whatever reason, this race is kind of tailed right off, and there's 3 weeks between the bigger race beforehand and this particular race, and it's a period where all of a sudden you're unwinding, and all that pressure you put on yourself to get into a good form mentally and physically beforehand was being relieved. And I get to this race, and I've had biomechanical issues and stuff like that, but all of a sudden I was in the lead group in this race. I was following the right wheels, and I was there, and I wasn't the ace car for my team on that particular day, but I was there, and I had a duty to my team to make sure that I stayed there. I was cramping for a good 2 hours, just not in a good physical shape for it. And I remember having to employ these techniques to just shut that out of my mind the whole time. It's like, Ben, you're cramping. This really hurts. You should stop. You should, what are you doing here? And it was just a constant, conscious decision in my mind to say, no, focus on following the wheel in front of me, focus on moving forward, focus on the finish line. And that was a way that I could apply these tools. And so this is not psychologists preaching to you here or anything like that. It's empowering you people by giving you these tools, and you can choose to apply them to your life where you see fit, whether it's just a corporate setting, or whether it's a performance setting with athletic endeavors from any realm, from beginning athletes all the way up to the world championship level. It's the same stuff. But you've got the power with this, because these tools are in your back pocket, and you can pull them out whenever you need to play that card. So I'll hand back over to these guys now, and go forward with that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ben. We'll talk about the mind dynamics briefly, and really here we're working directly with the mind. So once we have the body well regulated, now the mind's available to us to really push it in terms of a training perspective, and then to have it available to us from a performance perspective. So we develop focus and attention, we develop situational awareness, and now we've got all the keys to performance. And to do that, what we develop in these tools first is a thing called metacognition, and that's really the ability to be able to watch yourself and see where you're at and how you're doing, and to do that at the appropriate times. And then we develop awareness, which again is that sensitivity to seeing what's happening around you in the competitive space or in any space that you happen to be in. And then finally, the ability to keep your mind on track and on focus where you want it to be, so it's not wandering all around and putting you in a place where you're not dealing with the situation as it needs to be dealt with. And so, there's a couple important things to know here. There's an old saying in the world of neuroscience that neurons that fire together wire together. And what we want to do here these people looking down on the Grand Canyon, we have these old habits, these patterns, whether, they're negative thoughts or, a tendency to overtrain, or a tendency to kind of blow up at our teammates, or a tendency to, not be able to do X, Y, or Z, and all we can do is look at those things. Well, we can actually train that so that we can change it. We can have our own, we can develop our own Grand Canyons of, for high performance, rather than just having things that are occurring to us willy-nilly, and we don't feel like we have the capacity to change that. So, to develop capacity, the ability of the mind to do things, what we want to do is, we use this metaphor of a mag light, we want to go from like a little baby mag light like you have in your kitchen drawer to a mega mag, like a cop has that's walking around. And so we want to have the ability to really kind of increase the capacity of our minds and to strengthen our minds, and that is doable in just the same way that you strengthen a muscle. And so these skills will develop that, and at a physical level, you're actually going to get more gray matter. And what you're going to do is shrink the size of something that's called the amygdala, which makes you more prone to stress and more prone to illness and all kinds of other things. So we want to build capacity. And then we want to have the mental flexibility. We want to be able to hone down and go mag tight, right? I want to be able to focus my attention, and I want to tune it down. And then at the same time, I want to be able to open that up when I want to. And I want to be able to pick and choose where I'm at. The only way to pick and choose where you're at, just like if you're a runner, you know what your stride feels like when you want to be going for that long distance, and you know what that stride feels like when you want to sprint. You don't have to think about it. If I want to go 80% run, I know what 80% feels like. You can develop the same sensibility for your mind in terms of your capacity to stay focused, your capacity to keep your attention in one place, and then your capacity to open up into what's happening around you. That can be trained, and you can start picking and choosing. Oh, what's 50 or 60% of that? What's 70% of that? So that's the whole idea when you work directly with the mind. You start being able to develop the ability to pick and choose what's happening from inside your mind, to be able to let go of negative thoughts or things that you don't want so that you can focus on the positive things. And you can do that in a directed way, in an intentional, conscious way, so that you can pick from your toolbox how it is that you want to go about things. Okay? Let's see, I want to do a quick check on time.
We're good. We're good. And if we need to go over
Great. So we've got about another 10 minutes here. And so, Ben, you want to just share a little bit more about your experiences with the program?
Yeah, actually, I want to kind of change it a little bit at this point. I'm just trying to share my experiences with you. To the athletes that I work with. And I find it really interesting. I can kind of look back now and see throughout my career when I've had good success, where my mind has been at that point, and how I've actually employed some of these tools already without even really knowing about it. So, but before a time trial, I was always had the ability to put myself in this animated state, very clear-minded, very positive thoughts, and super motivated to the point where I could get the hair on my arm to stand on end. So it's not, the stuff is already there, but I've never really had a lot of control of putting it there in the right place. I could do it for a time trial because it was something that really motivated me, but I didn't have the skills or the wherewithal, the awareness to be able to do that in any other situation. So then I think about elite performing athletes, and throughout the world, quite often you see an athlete, all of a sudden, but they win a race. They hadn't won a race for a while. They win a race, and then they win a second race, and then they win a third race. All of a sudden, that they seem to get on this rolling ball, this amazing amount of momentum with their success, and that sort of stuff. I find that really interesting, and it's they're so motivated at that point, and they've got all that emotion to draw from their previous win. Crossing the finish line first is one of the reasons why we all do this, for it's such an amazing feeling. And it's a drug, it's a hormonal drug, and whether we realize that or not, it's something that we're slightly addicted to. When you have that recent thought, you have the ability to be able to bring that up again and basically inspire yourself to get back in that same good, healthy state of mind. But then, what do you do if you haven't had that win for a while? What do you do if you're in a race and everything's going wrong? You're having all of this stuff thrown at you, and you have to deal with that situation. How can you then bring your mind back on task each time? Each of these little challenges is something that you need to be, well balanced in order to, go out there, deal with that challenge, but then come back to your focus point and be clear-minded and just being able to concentrate on moving forward and getting the most out of your success. So, the mind is such a powerful tool in sports, and people people train so much, you know, like 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week. There's some crazy training volume going on out there. But very rarely people take the moment just to spend 10 or 20 minutes to practice these techniques in order to get their mind mentally strong. And there have been some amazing performance that go beyond sort of human possibility, you know, and we've seen it and we talk about it and we, you know, watch YouTube videos about it and stuff. What is it that these people, where are they that they're able to achieve this stuff? And the body has infinite possibilities and infinite potential, and so often, pretty much all the time, what it's restricted by is the mental strength and the lack thereof. So you see these people achieve these things that you're like, that's just not possible. It is, because they believe it's possible. That's where it all starts. So, you know, that's where I see the practical application of all this and where it can really help people in their performances. So, you know, it's not rewriting the record books. It's not crazy thinking. There's science behind all of this stuff, and it actually does make physical change. But it makes the physical changes on a level where you can't actually see it, and you can't. It's not a tangible thing. You can definitely feel it, and it's a performance tool that I really think that people need to invest more into their training routine. Pass back to you guys.
Yeah, and all things being equal, here's the bottom line. You know, whether you're an elite performer or not an elite performer, whether you're racing on weekends, you know, the bottom line is if you've got your mind in your pocket and it's your friend that's there supporting you, you're going to be doing better than the person next to you who's, you know, let's say it's your ability. And you're likely going to be reaching beyond your ability to other folks whose minds are not in a good state, but maybe they have better physical talent. So, you know, all things being equal, your mind's in your pocket, that opens up a lot of possibilities. And it's not just in the realm of athletics, it's in the realm of everything in life. And, you know, focusing here on the athletic part, but, you know, it just impacts all around. Frankly, if you're not a stressed out human being, and you're able to be focused and attentive to what's there in front of you, your life's going to be better. People are going to be happier with you. And it's just that simple. And so to train it directly, just train it like you would any other program, that's something that can be done. And again, it's not a dark art, it's a science. And, you know, Ben's talking about, oh, you know, you have that positive feeling from success. I mean, that's a great thing to have at your fingertips. But, you know, you can train yourself to bring yourself basically right there to that point of zone or flow so that you can just fall into it. And you're familiar with that state and you're familiar with what it takes to get there and what that feels like, most importantly. And so, again, all this can be trained. It can be taught, no matter what kind of performance you're looking at, whether it's athletic performance, day-to-day performance, performance as a human being moving through the world, all that's available. And, you know, one thing, frankly, leads to the next. And so if you're doing well on the inside in terms of what your mental state is, you know, if you train your mind, if you optimize your mental conditioning, then you're going to perform before, during, and after a race. And you're going to feel like you have the ability to start, you know, changing where you're at and when you want to be there, because you're going to be familiar with that, just like you're familiar with anything that's happening inside your body. And so that's what makes that's really what makes, you know, a key difference in terms of, you know, training it directly, understanding that it's not something strange and weird that just happens by coincidence, but now actually being able to go, you know what, I need this 10 millimeter socket. I'm going to pull out that 10 millimeter socket and I'm going to make an adjustment. And you have the toolbox to do that. And that's really what we're talking about. And again, you know, as Ben has been telling you, and, you know, Ben, his ability to apply this has been phenomenal, just in terms of, you know, what we've seen and the results that he's gotten, and that's available to everybody who trains with a discipline and diligence that somebody like Ben has. And so, we're going to. There's some information here in terms of connecting with us, some programs that we're going to be having in terms of learning this. There'll be a seminar here in Boulder. For those of you who are in Boulder who are interested, you can just reach out, and there'll be an email that goes out after this program, and you can just simply reply to that email and let us know that you're interested, and you can come in-house here where we'll be hosting a seminar. And then we're also going to be doing a video seminar as well. And so with that, let's open it up to questions, and we'll see if we can field some questions either for us or for Ben, and we can talk about things a little more. So we'll just run over maybe another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll cut it off, as it were. So.
Okay. So one of the questions that came in was, this person runs a charity which offers meditation and yoga to prisoners in the UK. They often recommend 25 minutes as a good amount of time for people to meditate, and they were hoping to hear what kind of daily mental practice you recommend.
Yeah, so the daily mental practice we recommend, from a time perspective, it's more or less the same. There's no difference there. We do, however, think that it doesn't necessarily need to be, 25 minutes sitting down in some way, shape, or form. That you can actually do this and tie it into your normal day. So if you work out and you go to the gym, you can start integrating these type of mental conditioning exercises into your daily regimen, so that you can patch over the course of a day 20 to 25 minutes of practice. Ideally you do some amount of concentrated time, just like you would do anything else, but you can patch it together over the course of the day. And in terms of the exercises we teach, we were talking about some of these specific, mind training exercise. We have, we call it riding the breath, which are different attentional and focus techniques. But, when it's all said and done, we have a series of about 8 or 10 techniques, mind training techniques that train first focus, and then attention, and then the ability to kind of, again, expand your awareness to take in either the inner human situation or the competitive situation, whatever the case may be. And it's a longer discussion to get into those, but again, from a time perspective and from a training perspective, the time is exactly right.
Thanks. We have another one. So this goes back to the slide towards the beginning of the presentation where you showed the two different graphs that came from Ben. I think he said when you what markers were used to do those measurements?
I have no idea. You'd have to talk to the doc that did those for Ben. But I think the key takeaway there, outside of the the hardcore what the chart is saying, is just in terms of Ben re-regulating out of his sympathetic fight or flight nervous system state to a state where he felt more in control and more at ease and more able to kind of manage what's happening around him and not feel in a state of overwhelm, which is common to fight or flight. I think that's the key takeaway there. I don't really know the charts enough to be able to say.
Okay.
So I can answer a little bit of that. So basically, it's a program called Insight Millennium, and what they're using, basically, I put 3 fingers into a little widget, and it's measuring heart rate variability. You can see some literature about heart rate variability and how your heart rate, the more your heart rate varies between beat to beat, shows less fatigue. The more variable it is, the more loose you are and ready to adapt and deal. So it's based upon heart rate variability, skin conductance, and skin temperature. So that's the parameters that are used to do that particular test. And then they have an algorithm based behind that which gives the score that they have there in the charts. So.
Great.
There you have it.
And thanks, Ben. Another question, can you please briefly explain some of the most effective techniques used to develop or increase situational awareness?
Yeah, so for situational awareness, it's interesting because, again, in the world of fighter jet flying, it's, how is it that you choose the people that have situational awareness? It's this kind of thing that people develop, obviously, as they get better. But then there's also a natural selection that happens when you're going through, training courses in terms of who has that and who doesn't have that. Well, there are certain techniques that you can use that start developing different parts of your brain which enhance your ability to, number one, take in information, and then number two, to start building pictures inside your head in terms of what's happening around you. And so, the techniques that we used were developed from some of the traditional techniques that both Bill and I studied in. And, in essence, what they are trying to do is really expand your capacity to kind of get out of your skin, so to speak, and start taking in more and more information in terms of what the situation is and how it's unfolding around you. In terms of the specifics, it actually would take longer to explain it than, you know, at some point teaching it, understanding it, practicing it, and then you have the experience of it, and that's really where you can see what the impact is.
Great, thank you. If you have any other FAQs that you typically get asked, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, well, I think one of the most important and critical questions that folks always say is, well, you know, how does this relate to me? And I don't know, Ben, I mean, I can answer that just in terms of what I see in terms of the instructional side.
Today, but we all have a story, you know. Mark's, you know, flying fighter planes, running around like Top Gun, and then, you know, we all deal with life. You know, life has a lot of interesting situations and challenging situations, and then with the sporting stuff, you know, we're all going to go through moments where there's going to be doubt or issues that are going to arise. So as I mentioned earlier, these techniques are actually tools, and it's in your toolkit, it's in your back pocket, and it's there for you to apply as you see fit. Part of beginning this process is just creating a little bit more awareness of where you're at, you know, mentally, and you know, where, you know, maybe you're holding tension in your shoulders, maybe you know, you're really clamped up. First to see where you're physically at, but as a state of mind. And at that point, you can choose where and how to apply those tools. We all have different things to deal with. You know, that's not the point of the topic here today. We all have things that we are dealing with and trying to overcome. And so these tools are general in the way that you can apply them to your situation itself. It's not talking to you and hearing, okay, so this happened to you, what do you do about that, this is what you say to that person. It's not that. This is a kind of something, a self-help tool. Like it's something that you apply yourself to the situation in order to overcome it. I think, does that explain it well?
Yeah, no, I think that really captures it. Bill,
yeah, I think most of us, you know, that are on this webinar have spent most of their lives, or a good portion of their lives, training. And in doing so, be it that you're in the weight room or you're in a pool or you're on the road on your bike or running, you're really there with your body and your mind. And we keep training our bodies, and we learn techniques and we learn form. And what's really lacking is this mind component. And the one thing it's going to do, it's going to show you things you already know because you spend a lot of time with your mind. From getting up in the morning when you don't really want to get that ride in, you know, before you start your day, or getting to the weight room late at night when you don't necessarily, you're already kind of tired, but you got to rouse the energy. All of that is coming from your mind. And to have a little bit better taste of that, you know, to make a better friend with that, and to have tools to see what thoughts are beneficial, which aren't, and to have the reins and control to pick and choose what I want to apply and how I want to apply it, is going to enhance just your training, your performance, your life. You know, just because you're going to have this extra piece well trained along with your body. And that's really what we're offering here. And to go through spending the time kind of in the lab by yourself, getting the tools, and then applying those tools into your world when you're out there on the road for 2-3 hours. You know, you're going to have two things going on. So you're going to be able to get two targets with one stone, as opposed to just training your body. So.
Great.
Great. I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Do you have another one from your FAQs?
Well, one of the you know, the common things that people ask is, well, you know, once I start training in this, is this very difficult to learn? Is this something that I'm going to be able to grasp? Is this something I'm going to be able to apply easily? And you know, just to highlight what Bill said, you know, we're dealing with our minds, and whether they're in a positive state or negative state all the time anyway. And what you'll find, as Ben pointed out, was when you first start managing your nervous system state, you'll see some results that happen really rather quickly, and you'll be able to start managing what that stress state is and what your activation level is. And the tools are simple and straightforward. And then on the heels of that, to start developing the capacity, to manage your focus and your attention. So, like as Ben was saying, he's on that climb and he's cramping up, and it's nonstop cramping. And you have to start making choices. Are you going to spend your time, going down the negative pipe of how terrible this is and what it's going to mean and all the other things, or are you going to be able to let go of that thought and move on? And the fact of the matter is, these techniques they're very straightforward, they're easy to learn, and more importantly, they're easy to apply. And once you start focusing on them, once you start integrating them, you can start applying them in all different parts of your life, not just the athletic piece. And again, I will tell you frankly, there's no silver bullet in life. And if you don't train these techniques, what I will promise you is they won't work. Period. Dot. If you train these techniques like you train anything else in terms of your life, they will work. And so, if you apply yourself and you're committed to them, they'll make an impact, and they'll make an impact quickly. And so, again, it's not a dark art. It's a science, and it's a training regimen. And like any other training regimen, you can master it. So.
But a good example is this time when Ben was cramping up, and we've all had this experience. You've got the body pain. The body's failing on you, right? But then you have your mind on top of it that keeps this ongoing chatter, not letting you forget about what's happening there. And what Ben was able to do by getting that tool to control his mind, to have the reins of his mind, was when that cramp would come up, he had the cramp. But the thought comes, it didn't serve him, let it go. You could just constantly cut that until finally, even though it's 2 hours down the road, that cramp eases up. And then there can stay on point, continue to perform at a high level.
That's what it's called.
If you would like some more information on that, you can just respond. We will also be sending out an email with a link to the archive webinar, so whether you were not able to listen to all of it or if you want to listen to it again, that will be available to you all. So thank you, Ben, Bill, and Mark. We appreciate you guys doing a webinar, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks to TrainingPeaks. Thanks, everybody, for your time and attention. Take good care.
Bye now.